everyone, and welcome to the Warrior One podcast, the podcast that empowers you to discover your purpose, embrace your identity, and engage faith tenaciously. I am your host, Dr. Lysandra Barnes, life coach, Bible teacher, author, speaker, and founder of the Warrior One Enterprise. I am so excited to be with you all today, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I know it's been a lot of guests with us, but this one is a special one, guys. This is one of my sisters from MSUGC, from Michigan State. Oh my gosh, I have my sister Alecia Smith in the building with me today. I'm so excited to have her here. And so in this episode, we are going to be talking about all things women. She is an amazing mother. She is a wife. She's also a businesswoman, as well as a career coach and a podcaster. Let me tell you, she is a super woman. So we are going to just jump into this amazing conversation. So are you guys ready to go on a journey of empowerment? Then let's go. Hey, Alecia, how's it going?
Listen, I am certainly blessed, honored, privileged, all the key words to be on your show today. And I don't take it lightly that we get this opportunity to connect. And I'm certainly grateful for the journey that God has brought you on. And it's just good. It's just good to be here with you.
Oh my goodness. Here's the thing. I was just on her podcast as well. So we are reconnecting from college. She is amazing. We used to hold down that alto section front row at MSU Gospel Choir. You better believe it. Okay. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know I said a few things, but we're ready to hear from you.
Certainly. I first and foremost am a woman of God. I love God. And I don't just say that as a cliche. I have a relationship with God and communicate with him daily, oftentimes. And as you mentioned, I am a wife. I've been married to my husband for 11 years. We actually will celebrate 12 years this October. Met him at church, praise God. And so we have been on this journey the last, like I said, almost 12 years. And we have 2 children. So that is a part of who I am. I'm a mother, and I have a almost 10-year-old. He'll be celebrating in a couple of weeks. And then I have a 2.5-year-old. So it gets real interesting in the Smith household. It's almost like starting over because our kids are 7 years apart. So, but that's definitely fun. Also, I am a child of my parents. They are just beautiful people to me. They are still moving around, doing their thing in Detroit. I'm from Detroit, Michigan as well. And I love helping people. I work in HR, human resources. I've been in the industry for over 15 years. And I love seeing people become their best self. And I know that that's what we hear a lot about in the world, but certainly even in the workspace and certainly even in ministry, that's important. Last thing I'll share is my husband is in ministry. So I'm married to a minister, and that has come with a lot of great things. It's allowed me to walk in my calling, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And then just supporting him is one of my main goals in life, is to be that helpmate that God asked, us to be. So yeah, that's a little bit more about me. I'm a Delta as well. So I am a part of Greek life, and I love my sorority. I just celebrated 14 years. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So with all the various roles in your life, how do you keep your identity as still being Alecia and not just mom, entrepreneur, podcaster, mother, wife, minister's wife? How do you still keep your identity in all of that?
That's a great question. So one thing that I will say is I started off with is my relationship with God. And I think it's important and imperative to anyone that seeks to do what God has called them to do, is that you are in alignment with him. And God gives me grace. Of course, there are days when there's overwhelm. There's days when there's a lot on the list and everything doesn't get done. But certainly having that relationship and that alignment with God is important. So that's first and foremost. But other thing that I do very practically, I live by a calendar. Like there's no way I could manage all these things without a calendar. And I even schedule the minute things, right? Laundry, like spend time with family, prep my meals for the week. Like, you have to schedule these things. And one of my coaches taught me that. And so I schedule. And the other thing I will say is I have a very supportive and engaged husband. Like, he is not just like, you're the mother, so you take care of the kids. No, my husband gets up every single day, takes our kids to school. He gets them ready. He gets them prepped out the house. Actually, it's me that every now and then, like, let me pack a lunch today, right? So I have a very, very supportive husband, and obviously his role that he has is very flexible, his career, so he's able to do that. But yeah, that definitely helps because we can't do it alone, and I want people to know that. Even though we're talking about being superwoman, I can't do it alone. I have to have God's grace. I have to have forgiveness for my own self when I just can't get something done, and I have to have help. You can't do it alone.
Oh, that's so good. I know that we say superwoman, but we're not using it in that connotation where you have to do everything and not get help from somebody else. I'm using it in the connotation that you have a lot of things on your list and you're mastering them well. So I think that's also very important because I think a lot of times we do as women take on that Messiah complex that we have to fix everything and we can't ask for help and we just have to just grind and get it done, when in reality, we can get a lot more accomplished when we have help. So that's
absolutely.
All right. Now, tell us, what is your purpose and how did you discover it?
I love that question because I kind of call myself the purpose lady. I started my podcast, which is called Walking Out Your Purpose, last July. I actually started on my birthday. That was my birthday gift to myself, was to allow an opportunity for me to have an outlet to share and to inspire and to encourage, because I normally would do that at church. And certainly we still were having church virtually, but I would do that in my hugs and in my talking with people and connecting physically right in front of people. And so I wanted to have an outlet. And so that's part of my purpose. Is I truly believe God has called me to be an encourager. I've done that, I would say, probably since I was in high school, probably middle school even. I brought several of my friends to Christ in middle school. So just that influencer, encourager, and wanting to live a life that represented Christ. And I wanted to also make sure that as I am empowering and encouraging women in particular, but certainly even men, is that I lived a life that showed them that example. So I believe I am called to, we all are called, obviously, to be a representative of Christ, but like, it's a burden on me if I'm not doing that. Like, I feel like some kind of way if my life is not lining up. So I guess I've been the goody two shoes, so to speak. But that's important to me. My purpose definitely is encouraging women, encouraging people in general to become their best self. And with some of the things that I've started recently, God has been working with me on narrowing that down and really working with people in their career. Because I am working in HR, it comes natural to me to be able to leverage those skills to help people. Because when we think about what it is that we do, whether we're an entrepreneur, whether we're working in corporate America or whatever we're doing from a career perspective, there's so much opportunity for us to build wealth, to build legacy, to change the culture in those organizations, to really drive something different, be the change you want to see. I'm sure you all have heard that quote. And so that is heavy on me. So that definitely lines up with my purpose and helping people get to where they need to be.
That's so great. You've been in HR for 15 years. So how have you seen your purpose manifested within that space?
Great question. So I have always been focused on, and I was thinking about this in general, just because I've had some form of this question before. And even when I go back to my beginning years when I worked at my previous company, I always wanted to be somewhere where what I was doing mattered. I wanted it to be impactful. I wanted it to not be busy work, right? I was very focused on making sure that what I'm doing actually matters and that I'm making a difference and that when I leave, right, there's something left behind. So I've always wanted to do that. And so I've always put myself in situations where I'm in positions where I'm able to do that. And what that allows me to do is to truly live out the best practices and the fruits of the spirit and all the things that God has asked us to do, because I'm engaged in what I'm doing and it actually matters and it's helping somebody, right? So whether I was working in compensation or whether I was working in talent acquisition, which is, of course, hiring, to now my role in diversity, equity, inclusion, the constant theme is that I am making an imprint in the organization. And so with that imprint comes who I am fundamentally, which becomes, again, the fruits of the spirit and the principles that God has asked us to live out. So in every role, I will say I've had the opportunity to do that. I've been fortunate, been blessed to be able to do that. I think the other thing that I would say to that question is leadership. So a couple of years ago, I entered into leadership, actually managing people. And I don't walk around, right, of course, with the Christian banner on my head necessarily. But if you talk to people that I have led, you hear all the things that we should be practicing anyway as Christians, right? Mm-hmm. Genuine, empathetic, caring, compassionate, listener, helped me move my career in a different direction, got me connected to the right people for my next move. I'm big on not hoarding talent. I love my talent, but I also want them to grow and I want them to embrace new opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. So again, that is how I have weaved in, without walking around with the Christian banner, weaved in my faith into what I do.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that is so great. What advice would you give that Christian person that's on that marketplace position? How would they be able to exemplify their Christian character without walking around with Christian banner and the Bible in their bookshelf?
Sure. So one thing I always tell people as they're thinking about where they work, it matters what company you're working for. Mm-hmm. So if your values do not line up with their values, that is not the place for you. And you need to really be looking at, because what happens is people, they want stability and they want security. So they're just like, I got to stay here because I need the check on the 15th and the 30th. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, but they know that it's a constant conflict. Right. And so one is get in a place that the values align and what you're seeing exhibited, because we could say one thing on the paper and on the PowerPoint, but that you also are seeing, right, in motion, and so are in action. So that's the one thing I would say practically that you can first do is make sure there's alignment there. Number two is, I think, having conversations with your leadership, if you're comfortable, hopefully you are, but having conversations with your leadership about who you are, what you stand for. And again, I didn't go into the conversation saying like, hey, I'm a Christian, but I said, hey, here are the things that are important to me. It's very important that I have meaningful work. It's very important to me that I'm able to make an impact. It's very important for me to have collaboration, to work well with people, work with different cultures. Mm-hmm. So I labeled out, right, what it is that I wanted out of the different roles. And so I think that's important because people sometimes don't want to have that transparent conversation about what they want. But I think people like clarity. Yeah. Like being clear is kind, as they say. And so that, and then I think you just exhibit the behaviors, again, with your colleagues, on different projects when you're involved in cross-functional opportunities, making sure that you are being who God has called you to be. And again, you can do that, again, with your actions, how you're working with your colleagues, how you are managing a particular project if you're involved. Certainly, as you think about getting involved in different ERGs, we call them employee resource groups, or as you're thinking about affinity groups or things of that nature, get outside of your comfort zone, get outside of your silo, your part of the organization, engage with other people so that, again, you have an opportunity to demonstrate who God has called you to be in those avenues as well, and influence.
Thank you for sharing that. I hope everyone is taking notes because she is in HR, so she knows what to look for. So thank you for that. Are you interested in starting a podcast but feel overwhelmed because you don't know where to start? That's where Buzzsprout comes in. It's the easiest and best place to begin. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. You'll get a great-looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and more. Buzzsprout gets your show listed in every major podcast platform like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. So follow the link in my show notes and let Buzzsprout know that I sent you, and you'll get a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and it also helps to support my show. Welcome back to the show. Let's jump back into the conversation with Alecia. Now, let's switch it up just a bit. Tell us a little bit more about your podcast, and then we'll jump into your new endeavors.
Sure, of course. So Walking Out Your Purpose podcast with Alecia Smith is something, again, I gifted myself for my birthday last year in 2020 during the pandemic. And again, it's an outlet for me to share. It started with me just sharing and pouring into whomever is listening, because I have male and female listeners, but whoever is listening, to just encourage you and inspire you to keep moving forward. I find that so many people are timid, and I just believe that the Bible is true, where God hasn't given us the spirit of fear, but of a sound mind, right? So I want to be that person in your ear that's saying you can do it. Like I'm the cheerleader, right? From my little seat here in Florida. So I always wanted to be there for people. So that's how I started the podcast. It has now morphed into more interviews with people and hearing from them their stories of how they got started and whatever God has called them to do. And I wanted people to hear those different experiences because we all get to wherever God wants us to get to differently. Right. And nothing gets past him. So everything that we go through, he knows about it. So it's good to people to see the different turns and how people have engaged with our purpose. And so that's what the show is about. I love doing it. And it's been a blessing. I hear from people quite often of how an episode has blessed them. So I'm grateful.
That's awesome. But what else has your podcast evolved into?
Well, it has pushed me to start new adventures because I'm on the show, right? Of course, telling people go, 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 right? And so I challenged myself. And actually what I did was I prayed and fasted earlier this year because people kept telling me like, you should monetize this. You should, make this a business. You should, do all these things. And I said, well, that's what people want. Let me ask what God wants.
Yes.
And so I prayed and fasted and asked God for clarity. I really wanted him to speak to me about what to do next with the podcast because it truly is for me a ministry. And not that you can't monetize a ministry, but I started it from a place of just wanting to pour, and it wasn't necessarily to make it into anything else. And so in that praying and fasting, God placed an individual in my life. I went to a Zoom call with a particular group of members from a church, and the lady that was presenting is not my business coach, but she was presenting about purpose. And so immediately I was like, oh, I need to connect with her because I want her on the podcast. That's what I was thinking. Like, oh, let me get her on the podcast, right? So, because she's talking purpose, that's my thing.
Yeah.
We of course connected, had her on the podcast, and then we started talking. She, like I said, is a business coach. And so we started connecting and I started talking about things. And so now I have started a business. And what I did was I started it with the focus with HR. So it's really for people that are looking for a career coach, right? So for that person that's saying, hey, I want to make that next bold move, but I don't know how. I don't know how to have the right conversations. I don't know if I qualify. I don't know how to move in that direction. I want to move out of an industry into a new industry, and tell me about these transferable skills that people talk about. What is that, right? I need help with my resume. I don't have the right keywords, because that's a passion of mine as well, to see people move up again, to build wealth and build legacy, which God is certainly okay with. We just don't need to love money, but he's okay with us having, wealth and building legacy. So that's kind of how that started, and God has been blessing it. And I had a moment not too long ago. I was like, Lord, now I need to sign like this because I'm going in this direction. I believe it's what you called me to do. But in that day, I got 2 clients, like out of nowhere. People I hadn't talked to before. I did not know. One person knew another person, got connected to my page and started following me and started liking things, and connected. Another person was like, I love your videos, because I do these videos also on Facebook. It's just kind of like little inspirational moments. And she was like, I love what you're talking about, what you're doing. So anyway, so God will show you if you ask. But again, I go back to what I said earlier, alignment. You have to be in alignment, whether it's what you're doing in your career, whether it's what you're doing in entrepreneurship, whether it's what you're doing in your spiritual life. You have to get in alignment with him, and he will bless it.
I love that. I was thinking about, as you were speaking, one of my favorite people in the Bible is Moses. He's my favorite because he has so many highs and lows. But the thing that always sticks out to me is when he was at the bush and he was at that transformation moment where he's now having to go back and then become a shepherd to a people, when before he didn't know anything about shepherding or leading in that capacity. All he knew was how to be a prince. And then he learned shepherding as a trade. And now he's shifting into being a shepherd of people. And he's like, Lord, what am I going to use? What am I going to do? And he's like, what is in your hand? And I think that is so key. Is like, you use what is in your hand to fulfill the purpose and the plan that God has set for you. Everything that we experience in life is for a purpose. I think that is so important. As you're talking, I'm like, all those years in HR, all the years in ministry, all the things that you've done has now positioned you in a way, even with the podcast, think about it, the courage and the confidence to step out and stay consistent with that one thing. And then now it's like, okay, shift here. And now you're not afraid to step out and do something that is like, well, I don't know how to do it, but I've been doing it.
Yeah.
And so I'm just excited just to see how God is, when you surrender to God and say, Lord, I'll do it your way. And he's like, okay, fine. Now that you said yes, I'm not going to just throw you out there, but I'm going to prepare you to step into that new place. So to those who are listening right now and you are on the fence of struggling with making that decision, I don't know, I'm afraid, but I feel the Lord is leading me in that way. I will challenge you to use what's in your hand, use the gifts and talents that you already have, and see that he's already prepared you to take that next step. And if you are in a career that you're feeling like you're at a dead end and you don't know how to shift, I encourage you to reach out to Alecia and get you a coach. Coaching is amazing. I love coaching. I love it, love it, love it. And I see so many clients being transformed, being changed, and being inspired that once you take that step and you really get focused in that way, you will see your life definitely transform. So just a plug.
Thank you. We appreciate the plug. And just to build on what you said, I think it's so important that we just take one step forward. I tell people, if you want to, you know what your vision is and you know where you want to go, and it just seems so large, so big, what have you. If you just keep taking a step forward, right? And every now and then you're going to take a step or two back because, right, life will just come, but just keep taking a step forward and practically look at, okay, what can I include in my agenda on a weekly basis, daily basis, monthly basis, whatever it is for you that's going to get you one step closer. When I started the podcast, I didn't have the Yeti mic. I didn't have all the, I didn't have the light. Mm-hmm. I didn't have all of these things, right? I had an iPhone and a voice. Mm-hmm. And direction from God. Start with what you have. It's in your, it's in your hands. You just start with what you have, and then, but you learn. Mm-hmm. And you would include additional things, right? So as time went on, I got the Yeti mic and I got the, all the things, right? But you just start. And I think that people, if they could just do that, right? Just do that one thing. And that start doesn't have to be the big thing. Like it's not, for me, I don't have the website yet. I have some other things, right? That still help people, direct people on what it is that I do. But the website will come, and I'm working on it, but it's going to come. But I was like, we got to start, right? So I'm going to start with a service. I'm going to start with this little one pager that I have. So you just have to do something that moves you along.
I agree with that. Getting out of your own way is so important because we can talk ourselves out of so many things because we are so afraid. Like, well, I don't have this. What about this? What will they say if, this and that, this and that? And I just want you to know that you have everything you need for this portion right now. And when it is time for you to have more, he will supply your need. He will put it in your ear. He will show you. And I think it's also important to go back to what you were saying about having that relationship with Christ, because the Lord will speak to you and say, go here, open this up, do this, meet this person, go on this website, do that, do this. And it's all preparing you, and do it afraid. And so if you just do it afraid and you overcome that, you'll see it wasn't as bad as you created it in your mind.
Yeah. And I like that. And I say, do it scared, right? Same thing. In this world, this new role that I'm in, actually at my 9 to 5, I'm doing it scared, honey. Like I am not, the expert in this part of HR, but I haven't been an expert in any of the parts of HR that somebody asked me to go do. Like you have to go in and you have to learn, and you have to give yourself the space and the grace to do that. So yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Awesome. So what advice would you give to women who are trying to balance multiple roles in life?
Get help and be okay that you are not going to be able to do a lot of things. Let me tell you, and be very transparent. Alecia does not clean up the house. I have outsourced that because I don't have the time, nor is that my ministry. So I have outsourced that to a person that comes in and does that for us. And that way my husband has a clean home to be in. Obviously that's important, right? Because we are keepers of the home. But I believe that God will give you the help that you need to still get that done. So of course, that's one thing that I want you to know is that the way to do all the things is not to do all the things, and it's to get some help where needed. And don't be so hard on yourself. And the other thing I will say is in order to balance it all, you gotta write it down. You have to really get clear about, okay, what are all the things? Now, I will tell you one area that I am learning in is to say no. Okay. I am a big yeser. Like, yep, I can do it. Yep, I can do it. Yep. And my husband just looks at me sometimes and is like, why in the world are you doing all these things? You have to map out your priorities, what's important to you. Again, get you a calendar and start to write those things out. Even write down family time, write down, give my son a bath or whatever, give my daughter a bath, whatever it is, right? You want to make sure that you get real clear about what those are. Because what I found for me is I kept saying family's important, family's important. Family went nowhere on the calendar. So God will check you. Like he will check you. So that's why I say it's a lot of things that you have to balance, but let's get clear about what our priorities are, because where you spend your time is where your important things are. So you want to make sure that you do that. And again, get you some help and make sure that whatever it is that you're doing ties into what either God has instructed you to do. As I mentioned, right, I got to be the keeper of the home. So I wouldn't outsource the work, right? I got the person, paid the person, like engaged with the person. My husband doesn't have to do anything related to that, right? Just so again, whatever God, because God has called us to do some things. So we need to make sure that we're doing those. But also whatever our purpose is, we need to make sure that what we're saying yes to. And that's one thing my coach has challenged me on. She's like, you saying yes to stuff, but what that got to do with your purpose, your brand, your like, it don't have nothing to do with it. So, so that's hard for me because I want to show up for people. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I'm working on that. So I want to be transparent about that. I am working on that because that will help with some of the balance.
Are you in need of a life coach? Let me coach you. As a life coach, I specialize in areas of faith, life, and self-love. My coaching mission is to empower, encourage, and inspire people to discover their purpose, build their faith, and enhance their self-esteem and self-worth. My goal is to create a one-on-one partnership designed to empower you to discover your God-given potential to fulfill the dreams and goals already on the inside of you. I look forward to engaging with you and help you reach your next level moment. To schedule a session with me, click the link in my show notes or visit my website at lasandrabarnes.com. Welcome back to the show. Let's jump back into the conversation with Alecia. Yeah, that's really good. My sister, she's married and she's been married for about 20 years. And she's a career woman, just like you, with kids and so many things going on. And she realized that as the keeper of the home, I don't have time to be cooking and cleaning and doing all the domestic chores. Well, I'm about to outsource this. The Lord has blessed us. We can get someone to do this. And then it saves on our marriage where we don't have to bicker and fight and go back and forth and everybody's needs are being met. So I think a lot of times it's important to communicate as to what's going on in both lives and how are we going to navigate our marriage in a way that's going to be successful for everybody. And if that means outsourcing, let's do it.
Yeah, you have to communicate. And even before I decided to do that, I said, hey, babe, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Because my husband, he would do other things. And so I was like, that's doing way too much. And that's part of that is my responsibility. And so not that you of course can share responsibilities, right? We know that. So I'm not about like specific roles for people, but certainly, again, God calls us to some things that we are responsible for, at least that get taken care of. Anyway, so I at least asked him about that. Like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And he was on board with that. You have to have communication. You have to be on the same page. And again, for me, my husband is okay with like, hey, I get up in the morning, I take the kids to school. Like, that's just a thing. And so now that we're virtually, right, working virtually, my son comes home from school at 2:00. So I take care of all of that, right? You have to talk to each other and you have to come to some type of agreement on what's going to work in your household. Don't worry about what Susie and Joe and all of them is doing over there. What's going to work for your household to keep, to your point, your sister said, to keep them aligned and their marriage safe and cared for is important.
That's awesome. So I got a question for you. As a career woman, and you are a leader in your industry, how do you balance being assertive and at work, but then being loving and submissive at home? And let me say this, when I say submissive, I am talking about it not being oppressive. So when I think of submission, I think of allowing someone to have my best interest at heart, willing to trust that they have my best interest at heart. And so I'm willing to follow the leading of that they provide. So under that statement or definition of submission, how do you balance the two?
Oh, girl, I love you. I love that. But that's good because we need to be grounded in the same definition. And I totally subscribe to that definition. And I certainly think that's what God meant by submission. So for us, I think the one thing that we have done, I will say in the beginning of our marriage was probably a little bit more difficult because of independent, right? That was the independent woman. That was the century of that. Mm-hmm. And not that it's not anymore, but that was a big deal back then. And so I can do this. I can take care of this. I can da. And my husband was just like, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. That's not how we want to roll. So I think being that I want to, at the end of the day, please God, and I'm married right. And this is what I tell people all the time. Mm-hmm. Besides accepting Jesus, this is the most important decision that you will make, is who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And so because I made what I believe is the right decision, I'm okay and I'm good with following my husband because, again, he has my best interests at heart. And so sometimes I think it can be a little bit, in the beginning, I think it was a little bit more difficult because, you know, it was just this is how I am at work. And I came home with that same speech, but he nipped that in the bud a long time ago. Like, that's not what we're going to do. And so now, even as a leader, I think what happens is I'm more open to conversation, right? I'll give you a practical example. So 2019, we moved back to Florida. We had moved to South Carolina for my job. Mm-hmm. And we had moved back to Florida for a new opportunity with the same company. And we were just trying to sell our house in South Carolina. And so I moved here first so that we can get everything situated here for my son to go to school. Once my husband came up, it took us a while to sell our house in South Carolina. And so by the time we sold, it was probably like February. So I had already been here since July. So now this is the next February. So this was July 2019 to February 2020. And so when we sold the house, I was like, perfect. We got our investment now that we can go take our proceeds and we can go take to put on a house. My husband was like, no, we're going to pay off your student loans. Mm-hmm. So we can be student loan debt free and we can continue on our journey to debt freedom. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, you telling me with this, I don't even know how much the proceeds were, but whatever number, like, you know, it was quite a few numbers. And I'm like, we were in temporary living. We were in an apartment. Oh, I was like, at least don't live in no apartment, honey.
Right.
He was like, well, you are going to be today. Like, whatever.
Wow.
Because again, I could have been like, well, I'm the breadwinner. I'm the this, I'm the that. I was like, you know what? And of course, initially I was like, man, really? But I said, you know what? I'm going to yield to my husband. That's what he wanted to do. And lo and behold, we ended up in a pandemic where ain't nobody want you in their house anyway.
Right.
You know, people not knowing about their job security. I mean, just a lot of things happened, right? And then with some things that happened at work and some other things that occurred, we were put in a position where we were able to, this past March, we were able to become completely debt free. We have no debt.
Wow.
So that is where, I want to give that practical example because I wanted people to see it in real life. Because I think sometimes we say, oh, listen to your husband, but people don't really, they're like, what does that mean? Tangibly, what does that mean? That is an exact example. One other example I'll give and then we'll move on. But years ago, I wanted to leave my previous company. And I had talked to my husband about it. And he said, yeah, you can go interview. I think he may have thought that like, oh, you know, you're not gonna get a new role. Like you're just going to just talk to people and, you know, but I got a role. It was in Pennsylvania. It was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so I went and it was awesome. And I was like, hey, we're moving. And I'll never forget the day he was like, no, God got us on assignment here. I've heard from him. Like, this is not for us. I'm sorry. Did you see this salary?
Say what now?
Did you see that? Right. And so what happened was I said, again, in the moment, of course, yes, emotions are high, whatever, right? But I got to a place where I said, Lord, your will, not my will. And I surrendered to what my husband had said, like, nope, this is not the time. And I went back to work and I said, hey guys, I found this other opportunity. This is what they're offering. I really would like to stay at the company. When I tell you they matched the offer and put me in the exact role that I wanted, that they created, it didn't even exist.
What?
Like, yes. So this is not just about, oh, I have to say yes to my husband. Like if he's a godly man, he's listening to God. And so when you follow suit, you will be blessed as well.
Ladies, single ladies, married ladies, all the ladies. Okay. I hope you are listening to this. This was some great insight into what does it mean to be a successful wife, to be able to yield in those hard moments and still trust that he has your best interest at heart. And the honesty of that, you know what? It's not easy all the time. She's not getting ran over. She's not being disrespected or anything like that. So I think it's also important for us as women of God, and even in those who may not be women of God, but to really start changing your mindset as it relates to what submission is, and then have those conversations to say, this is what my definition is. What's your definition? And how can we walk together within this? And if it doesn't align, then you maybe are not the person for me. But I think that was a beautiful example.
Thank you. And what I will say real quick is when my husband and I were dating and when we first got married, we were very clear. He knew I was career driven. He knew I wanted to, take it as far as God will let me take it. And so every time that we've entered into a conversation about moving, because we've also moved quite a bit with different roles, but it's not new. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I think, again, having that alignment and that connection and understanding, and I also understand his work. He's in ministry. And so if God say yes or no, that's what we have to listen to. So being flexible with each other within both of our purposes is important. So.
Oh man, this is so good. Now, got 2 questions for you. What advice would you give to your younger self? Now that you have accomplished so many things, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're an entrepreneur, you're a career woman. What would you say to your younger self?
Ooh, great question. One thing that I would tell myself earlier in my career, I did not speak up for myself. I was the person, again, that thought, I love God. And so, I'm just going to do a great job and the opportunities will just come to me. Like they're just going to drop in my lap. And so I didn't speak up enough. And so I think at my previous organization, I could have gotten a little bit further, which would now have me further. But, God does everything for a reason. So I don't regret it, certainly. But I would tell myself to speak up for yourself. And that's why with this career coaching is very important to me, because I want people to enjoy what they do, because you spend so many hours at work.
Yeah.
Right. And so you want to be able to enjoy that and be doing something that you're passionate about. Anytime people can align their purpose with what it is they do in their 9-to-5 or what they do in their entrepreneurship journey, it gives you more fulfillment. Mm-hmm. So I would tell myself to speak up for myself. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. That's what I would tell myself.
That's really good. Now, can you speak to that career woman that is working really hard, but her home life is suffering? Could you give her some encouragement as to how to balance her personal life and her professional life?
Yeah, I think one important piece is, again, you got to get really clear on your priorities. And one thing that I had to do with my husband is say, okay, I want the family to be important, but I also want my career to be important. So how are we going to work together? Again, you can't do anything by yourself, right? So how are we going to work together so that we can weave those things in? And honestly, ask your husband. Every husband is not the same. So ask your husband, what are his needs? And understand what those are so that you can make sure that you're hitting those things. And think about what it is that you want to accomplish with your kids. For some, it may be like, for me, making sure they do their homework and making sure they do their assignments for Bible class. That's me all day. My husband, he don't engage with that. Like that is me all day. So again, don't be too hard on yourself. Figure out if that is important to you. Again, have the conversation and make sure that you're engaging where you can. You can't do everything. Even for those people that are like stay-at-home moms, they still got other stuff they want to do. Like they can't just, everything is not, kid 100%. Like they have to take a shower. They have to, they have to do all the things. So, figure out again, what are those things that that you want to be present. For me, I want to take my son to his soccer games on Saturday mornings. So that's important to me. So that's in my calendar. Now, sometimes, depending on what's going on, I may take a call while I'm sitting there watching him play, but he see mommy and she's waving and she's paying attention, right? So I would say make sure that you not be too hard on yourself, but write it down so you can get real crystal clear. The other thing I would say also is remember this, especially if you're not an entrepreneur. Your career could be here today and it could be gone tomorrow. I work in HR, so there's downsizing, there's restructure, like there's all these things that could happen. Even for me, like it can happen. And what's going to remain there is your family. So do what you need to do from a career perspective, but don't let it get too out of balance and too out of whack where your marriage is drifting. You don't even know your spouse. Y'all don't date. Y'all don't talk to each other. Y'all don't engage with each other. So I'll give you another practical example. For my husband and I, it's important that we continue to do something together from a ministry perspective. So we're right now, this month of May, on Tuesday nights, we're teaching singles. Every Tuesday night is part of a singles ministry that we got connected to during this whole pandemic called Jesus Sprinkle. And so every Tuesday night, we're teaching on dating in a social media age. That's another way for us to stay connected. Remember our story, and how we dated. So again, that's important to me. It also, helps me empower, encourage, inspire, but it also helps me work with my husband. So that's just a practical way where you can still balance things, do things together, make it very clear for yourself what it is that you want to do, and just know that you can't do it all. But what are the core things that you say, you know what, I got to make sure these things get done?
Awesome. Oh my goodness. That was amazing advice. I appreciate all the nuggets you have dropped in this episode. It's so much. Oh my goodness. So how can we follow you on social media?
Yeah. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Barnes, for having me. I, again, just applaud you. So proud of you and everything that you're doing. I love Royal One. I think it's just a beautiful thing, and what you're doing. So I may be calling you too to get some coaching. But
I'm available.
But you can follow me on Facebook, of course, at Alecia Smith, of course, but also Walking Out Your Purpose. I have a page for that. And then as far as my business, you can email me at aleciadsmith.com. Is where you can find me. And also when you go to Walking Out Your Purpose on Facebook, I talk about the business there as well. So you can find the information there. But I would love to connect with you. Even if you don't need the career coaching at this point, I hope you do. But if you don't, share it with someone else. But also come to the Walking Out Your Purpose page, because it's just good inspiration, good encouragement for you to take that next step.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I will definitely have you back so we can get some career tips. So I would love to do an episode just on how to navigate the career world. I know you dropped a lot of gems on us today, but I want to do one that's focused specifically on how to navigate corporate from an HR perspective.
We'd love to do it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Royal One podcast. I look forward to providing you with more encouraging content that encourages you to discover your purpose, embrace your identity, and engage faith tenaciously. If you have any questions you would like answered on the show about your purpose, faith, relationships, or anything in general, email me at info@lasandrabarnes.com to ask that question. Make sure that you follow Alecia Smith on Facebook at Alecia Smith, Alecia, or you can join her Walking Out Your Purpose page. Or last but not least, you can email her at Alecia, Alecia, at aleciadsmith.com. If you want to book a one-on-one coaching session with me, you can. Just click the link in my show notes to schedule that session. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment to the podcast. You can follow me on social media at Miss Royalty143 on Instagram and Twitter, and Dr. Lasandra Barnes on Facebook. Remember, you can purchase a copy of my book, Rejected to Accepted, online as well. Just click the link in my show notes to do that. And last but not least, you have been listening to the Royal One podcast, where I empower women the royal way. Have a great day.